I had no idea what that was. I just showed up to work one day, and that's how I learned mortgages. 95% of my team, this is the first corporate job they've ever had. The average age for our sales team is probably 25, 26. You're going to have flaws, but you get back out there and you fight every day to do the best that you can. You're going to be someone that's going to solve a problem. So learning what you can do and what you can't do, which is usually the part that people fail at, is what I can't do. It's just that's a big one. Just staying viable and visible. When I tell people, always try to bring something new and just always be there. AI allows them to have the same size, scope, and reach as larger companies.
Welcome to 80 Mortgage Insights, the series where we spotlight the people, ideas, and strategies helping shape the future of the mortgage industry. At 80 Mortgage, we believe success is built through strong relationships, continuous learning, and a commitment to helping others win. That's why we bring you conversations with industry leaders, top-performing professionals, and members of the 80 Mortgage team who are making a difference every day. Today, I'm excited to welcome Mike Pearson, Senior Vice President of Sales at 80 Mortgage. Mike's journey is a remarkable example of what can happen when talent, discipline, and opportunity come together. From his early days in the mortgage operations to leading one of the industry's most dynamic sales organizations, Mike has spent more than 20 years helping mortgage professionals grow their businesses and achieve their goals. In this conversation, we'll discuss career development, leadership, the value of mentorship, building meaningful partnerships, and how technology and artificial intelligence are creating new opportunities for mortgage professionals willing to embrace change. Whether you're a broker, loan officer, account executive, or simply someone looking to grow in the industry, I think you'll find plenty of practical advice and inspiration in Mike's story. Let's get started. Hey, Mike, great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show. Always like to talk to you. You're a rock star within 80 Mortgage, and all of us know you, and a good amount of our MLOs and broker partners that are all across the country know who you are just because you're just out there.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, incredible to be here. I love doing these kind of events. It's always interesting doing them over the Zoom or Teams in this case. So it's a good time to do them. It makes it easy to put together. So awesome to be here.
All right, great. Well, and you're a Florida native. And how long you been with AD now?
I have been here just short of 4 years. I think it's 3.5 years, something like that. But we still get to do that. Like when we were kids, we had to do like, I'm 7.5 years old. So,
Right.
I'll hold on to that 3.5 years and not round up. But yeah, it's been a good time. You mentioned, whatever, moving up in the company or whatever. And, that's what can happen with a company that supports you and where you're going. So yeah, it's been great.
No, that's a great point, because that's one of the things that with AD I just see is, for young people especially that start with us, if they're willing to dig in and learn their craft, their opportunities just keep opening up for them, and they just have to think long term and not focus on the instant gratification so much. I talk about this a lot and other things, other channels, but that's a great point. So you started as an AE, right?
I did. Yeah. Well, I started in operations. So, when I first started, I was a junior coordinator, which is essentially, we still had paper files back then. So my basic task were to alphabetize the loan files. That was basically what I started doing. So I did that for about a month, and then I was a full-time coordinator. Then they let me like actually handle loan files and get the docs ready and kind of stack the files for underwriting and that kind of thing. And it's kind of a funny story. I think maybe I've told you before, if not, back in those days, again, we had paper files. and you would see the files would come in, and I kept seeing all these initials come in. It's like JS, JS, JS. I'm like, what in the world is that? And someone's like, oh, well, that's the account executive. That's the salesperson that covers that account. And I kept seeing that, and I'm like, and they make commission on every one of those files that come in. They're like, yes. I'm like, okay. So it was 3 months later I got into sales. I'm like, that's where I need to be. So I love to pretend that it was like this. I love the mortgage industry, whatever. No, it was money. I saw a commission, and yeah, that put me into sales pretty quickly.
I remember you telling Serena something about back when I still spelled mortgage with one G, or something like that. And
People make that joke, but literally, I had no idea about this industry. So just taking a step back, I was in the military. I met my wife in Gainesville, Florida, and we relocated to Tampa, Florida. I was in the military. I was in the Army, and I did telecommunications. But at that time in Tampa, there was all these telecommunication hubs, Singular Wireless, AT&T Wireless. They all had, or Verizon. They all had cell phone hubs in that area. So that was my plan. I was going to move down there. I was going to get in telecommunications, and my wife very nicely said, I appreciate. I want you to chase your dreams, but we need some money coming in the door. We still have rent to pay. We have things that we got to pay. I'm like, okay. So I started temping, and my first temp assignment was just that time it was Chase Manhattan Mortgage Corporation, now JP Morgan Chase. I had no idea what that was. I just showed up to work one day, and that's how I learned mortgages. So yeah, it was a whirlwind. But that's now going on 25 years ago, and haven't looked back.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So 25. Okay. So that was your first taste of mortgage, like 25
It
years
was
ago.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was
Okay.
literally it.
That's
Yeah. 2001.
okay. And but with you didn't started becoming an AE until you're with AD Mortgage, right? Or where you,
No. Yeah. No, I started as an AE. It was still 2001. So maybe 6 months into my career. I got into sales pretty quickly. It might have been the beginning of 2020 or 2002, but yeah. So, and I was an AE for, I don't know, 12 years or so before I got into management and started, working on teams at different levels, producing manager and then non-producing and national. So, lots of different kind of scenarios through the run. But yeah, so I was an AE for a very long time. Really loved the position. In a lot of ways, I wish I was still doing that. There was a lot of freedom and latitude in that position. But something, I don't know. I'm just the type of person I always wanted to see other people succeed or teach other people how to succeed. It was always kind of part of my DNA. So I got out of the world of the AE and started working with AEs, and that's what I love, and that's what we do here. I mean, you talk about young people. 95% of my team. This is the first corporate job they've ever had, much less in the mortgage industry or the finance community. So the average age for our sales team is probably 25, 26, something like that. It's a very young team, and they've learned the business here, which I love for two reasons. One, it keeps me young, keeps me on my toes all day long. But also I felt like for a very long time, we haven't had kind of a, teaching and kind of turning over this industry. A lot of us are getting older and older, and we've all been doing it for decades, and there hasn't been a lot of new faces coming in. And I feel like finally, we're not the only company doing that, but finally companies are reinvesting in a younger generation that's coming in, which is needed with the way and the pace that technology is growing. You need those younger people that are more native to the technology that's coming out.
no, and I agree 100%. It's I talk a lot about this with my team in particular, and that is that you don't know what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but you have skills and you have a knowledge base that is fresh compared to mine because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a spring chicken either, and technology's moved along and opportunities and different resources have moved along that often just go over my head. But with my team in particular, they understand what those resources are, but they still have that youth about them. So,
Right.
there's that combination that you have to balance, which
Certainly.
is, hey, I have things to teach you, but because you have these great skills that you've learned just growing up in this kind of generation, you're able to take, that knowledge and really
Mhm.
put it into use fast, which is good. And I see this especially with our AEs. And I speak to a lot of them quite often, and they really are incredibly knowledgeable.
Mhm.
And this was not something 20, 15, 20 years ago I would have expected out of 25, 24, 25 year olds coming right out of university or whatnot to be as knowledgeable as they are.
Mhm.
And they still have to build their networks, and they still have to,
For sure.
develop those relationships. But I think we certainly provide a good base for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where I lay all the credit. We have a great learning and development team. They really do. I mean, these I call them kids, but these young adults come aboard and they really go through a boot camp. I mean, like I said, most of them, some of them come with some mortgage and some real estate background, but most of them don't. And they've got to not only learn a new company, a new position, a new industry, all new terminology. So we do a really good job. I mean, we do a 30-day, very intensive training program for all of our new hires, and that's like the starting point. That's just so you can kind of start, talking the language a little bit. I liken it to like, like Spanish 101. Like enough to ask a couple questions, but there's still a lot to learn. But they do a really good job of getting them up and running, and we see people producing in just a couple months because of that. They're just kind of like launched out of a cannon with the knowledge that they're empowered with. And then, obviously with the work that our marketing team does and our technology that we offer, there's a lot for a young person that's just getting into this industry to kind of soak up. And we see some doing, extremely successful, and many of them, surpassing their goals in year one. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's remarkable to see. And like, I think it really starts at the top, because there is a certain, I don't know, a certain work ethic and a certain focus on excellence, not perfection,
Mhm.
but excellence. And that comes right from, Max and Lana, and
For
and
sure.
for me, my boss Eugene, the chief
Mhm.
marketing officer. And the goal is hey, we know we're not going to be perfect, but we can be excellent at many things. And then I think that kind of the culture really carries down. And it
Mhm.
also I don't know if it for my people, that my team, I think it takes the pressure off them to be instantaneous successes, and as a result, they are quicker successes because they're not under the pressure to I don't know, do something absolutely oh viral with their performance. So I think it's a really great balance. You were in the Army years ago.
Yes.
Did your service have an impact on how you approach going when you got into the mortgage industry? Were some of the skills that you learned, either soft or hard skills, were they tangible for you? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, yes, but even taking a step behind that, right? So I did college, I did, all that kind of stuff. I joined the army literally because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm kind of that kind of classic example of a guy that was kind of, I wouldn't say I was lost, but I was maybe just disorganized. I really just didn't have a lot of passion for anything in particular. There's a lot of things I like to do, but I was just kind of dabbling, right? So the first thing I got out of the army, outside of the fantastic benefits that I got out of it, but the biggest thing for me from like a hard skill, soft skill side was just that kind of direction. And then second is the organization. Um, I in a lot of ways, I'm a different person coming out of the military. And then listen, I didn't go serve overseas. I didn't fight any battles. I was kind of in peacetime. I spent most of my time, working on Humvees and doing maintenance on machines. I didn't do a lot of like what I would consider hard service, but still there was a lot of obviously discipline, a lot of physical stuff, but then just kind of the mental strength of doing the job on a day-to-day basis and learning from the examples of the people that went before me. And I think a lot of that set me up for success in this business. I was just having lunch with someone today and was talking about how there are struggles and stresses that we deal with. We are dealing with, we're a step removed from the borrowers, but most of the borrowers that we're working with that are the other end of the transaction, this is probably the largest investment they're going to make in their lives. There's a lot of stress revolved around these transactions. And that, for right or wrong, funnels in a lot of different directions. And one of the directions it comes to is the salesperson. And we have to deal with that. That's what we're paid to do. There's no like hiding from it. There's no like, well, that's not fair. That's the gig. So just some of the mental strength skills that was kind of instilled with me in the military have kind of hung in with me through the mortgage industry. And then that organization, I still, every single day, I've got sticky notes sitting on my desk. Every single day I come in and write out what I'm going to accomplish that day. The things that I don't, start the list the next day. So some of that organization has really funneled through. And I think, especially in a time when I didn't have the skills, when I didn't have the knowledge, the practice, the habit of it carried me through until I could make up the skills and I could learn the knowledge and learn the product information. In the short term, I made it up with just effort until I got there. And I try to instill that same thing with the sales team. Listen, like you said before, you're not going to be perfect, but that doesn't mean you settle for less than that.
Yeah.
You understand that you're going to have flaws, but you get back out there and you fight every day to do the best that you can, however you define that, right? So long way to answer your question is yes. A lot of the skills that I learned in the military, I think, not only impacted my personal life, but definitely my professional life as well.
And I was in the Fort Lauderdale office for a whole week, and I was just talking to everybody. But I do have to ask you a question, though. Okay.
Sure.
And this is back to Ramona. So Ramona, one of our colleagues, for you folks, she mentioned that that Mike at one point played Santa Claus.
See, I don't know what she's talking about. So the way that happened is every year Santa comes to the office and delivers toys or delivers the presents for our Secret Santa gift exchange. And every year Santa is there and then he leaves right before I get down. It's unbelievable. Like, I have missed him the last 3 years in a row. It's crazy. And every time I'm like, well, make sure he stays here. Like, I've never gotten a picture with him. It's not fair. No, yeah, yeah. So we started doing all these like toy drive events for the FAMP. And so that went on for like a year or so. And then when A&D found out that I had the Santa suit, then yeah, I got enlisted to fill in for Santa because he could not be here in person. So I got to play the role a couple times. It was a good time.
All right. Well, like I said, Ramona said you got to ask him, and you got to ask him about it. And she's, like I said, she's great. All right. So let me ask you this. So we'll rewind just a little bit onto the vet thing. Do you think the mortgage industry is a great place for vets?
I do. I do. And just going back to the military thing, right? It's like you get out of it what you put into it. It's like any other job. I know people who have gone in to the military thinking it's some magic pill to change their lives. It is not that. It's like any other position, right? Or there is a lot that you can get out of it if you push yourself to put into it what it requires, right? So just to kind of to clarify that. But again, there was so many things about the military that helped me become what I did in the mortgage industry. Was it a direct? No, I never learned about mortgages. I never learned about finance while I was in the Army. In fact, I blew more money than I saved while I was in there.
Yeah.
However, that structure and stuff we talked about, the organization, those things, like I said, really kind of filled the holes while I was learning the industry. So I think the skill sets, as far as the structure and the things that you become as a person, really helped me succeed in a new industry. Would that be just mortgages? No, there's probably a lot of other places where vets can plug in, and that skill will help them probably move into most positions a lot faster than someone just off the street. Because on top of the skills and desire and all those kind of things, you also have this other layer of the military background that not only can help with hiring, just because people hire vets in particular, but the reason they hire vets is because of the other stuff that comes along with it, the discipline, being able to work well with others, the ability to work with superiors, those kind of things are definitely what makes the military kind of run the way that it does, and that translates a lot into the professional world as well.
Um, a- mo- Half the people I know with AD never woke up one day and said, "You know what? I want to get in the mortgage industry."
It's probably
And
more than
yet,
that. Yeah.
s- uh, yeah. So I'm saying that a lot of skills that we learn in other jobs
Hmm.
um, translate well to certain positions within the industry. I wonder, how many of them are vets?
Hmm.
Because it seems like a place where they would really fit in very well, with especially when you have to be diligent and stick to a schedule and work through adversity and push through it. It seems like those are the kinds of experience and tough skills that would really translate to our industry.
Definitely.
So but yeah, so let me ask you this. All right. So, it's we've established as a great place, AD in particular is a great place for young people to grow, to succeed, to find their niche. What are ways that new AEs or business development specialists or whatnot, what are things that they can do to level up their game, to become better professionals within the industry?
Yeah, I mean, and this kind of changes as your development stages change as well, right? And in the beginning, the biggest thing that you're delivering to your customer is solutions. What programs do you offer, and how can they fill the void for me? Or where competitors or their other lenders are falling flat, how can you lift me up, right? Because that's, especially in the very beginning, right? Most of the time, not having a past relationship with that client, most of the time you're not going to be their number one lender. You're not going to get their pristine loans, right? You're going to be someone that's going to solve a problem. So in the beginning stage, it's all knowledge, right? Where do we fit in? Where does the competition fit in? What are some of the niche programs and things that we can offer that can help bring an additional deal to the client, or help them find a way to get a deal that got turned down to turn it into an approved loan? So those things in the beginning are very important. So learning what you can do and what you can't do, which is usually the part that people fail at, is what I can't do. You know, it's just that's a big one. What I can't do, and then knowing a little bit about the competition, right? You don't have to be a genius at what everyone else is doing, but know where the holes are, because those are likely places that if you can plug in with one client for a DSCR loan, for example, then likely there are other people in the same boat where you can plug in. So that's kind of in the beginning. After that, it becomes more about the habits and the regimen. As you're growing your relationships, keeping contact with your clients, your contacts that you're working at with different offices, that's another one. Just staying viable and visible. When I tell people, always try to bring something new and just always be there. There are a lot of updates. We have updates 2 or 3 times a week. There's always something to talk about. There's always some additional value. Do we always ask for a deal? Yes, we always ask for a deal, but most of the time, there's not always a deal available, right? A lot of times it's just bringing some additional information so that they make that connection when the opportunity arises.
No, that's an excellent answer. And let me tell you, you brought up something that no one's ever told me before, but that I've kind of known. We do this in marketing, and that is competitor analysis.
Yes.
What is going on with our competitors? What are they doing? What's good about it? What's not good about it?
Hmm.
Where do we have an opportunity to take advantage of a gap? And
Right.
And that is, and it's a great skill to learn, is that by looking at your competitors doesn't necessarily mean that you have to adore them, and it doesn't mean you have to despise them. It
Correct.
just means that you need to respect the fact that they're there, and that is like the sun coming up on, in the morning. It's because that's going to be there. You're always going to have it.
Yeah.
But how do you find where you fit with that is something unique. And of course, we do this in marketing all the time. But
Mhm.
but for other people, that's a great selling point. Is
We do that
where do you
on
fit?
a we do on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week, but at least once a week, we go through a competitive analysis, we call it. And we talk about the pluses and minuses, right? I mean, obviously our primary function is to earn and find additional business for A&D,
Yeah.
right? So there's no surprise that's what we're out to do. But at the same time, there is certainly opportunities where I'll get a scenario or something for, say, a reverse mortgage, a product that we're not doing today. Well, I still want to be a solution for that client. I still want them to come to me to find the solution if they don't already have it. So I need to know who else in the space does it. And then the next stage is, well, who else in the space does it well or has a connection that's going to take care of my client the way I'm going to. So that's kind of the conversations that we have. Certainly there's an aspect that A&D wants to be number one, and we want to find all the ways that we're better than everyone else, hands down 100%. But at the same time, the second element of that is when we can't do something, and thankfully that's rarely, but in those rare cases where we can't come through, I still have a responsibility to my client to help them get that deal done because I need them to stay viable. They're not going to have an opportunity to do business with me if they aren't continuing to be profitable and viable themselves. So supporting them so that in turn they support us. And that's why, when we talk about, our relationships with our clients, we always say the word partner. And you'll see partner support, partner approvals. It's about the partnership. We really want to focus in on that. It should not be one way or the other. It shouldn't be a one-way street, right? I shouldn't be just the mouthpiece for the client, and then in turn, it shouldn't be just me begging them for business all the time. What am I bringing to the client, and then what is the client bringing to me? That's a partnership where we're both bringing something to the table and supporting each other. And we try to, from the top down. Max is a huge proponent of that, and we try to get that word out all the way down the line so that, as a company, we're steered in that direction. And we think long term, instead of being a taker or being a giver, we want to take both sides of that. And hopefully that partnership is what's going to elevate us to being number one.
Hey, and I love, and I mean, I couldn't have said this better myself. It's great because, like you pointed out, if it's a partnership, and Dustin Owens says this all the time, partners bring value to each other,
Yeah.
not just, it's not one directional. And he was talking about, how do you deal with realtors, for instance, and he's like, you got to bring some value to them. How are you helping them build their business?
Right.
And that's important in that relationship building. The old saying, the people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And
Yeah.
I'm a true believer in that because in order to succeed, you have to be a good listener and a good problem solver.
Mhm.
And if you're always doing the talking, you're not listening. My dad used to always say, God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason. Um, so, but yeah, I'm full of these. That's what I do. But but yeah, so no, these are great points. I can't wait to add them to my little index of excellent ideas
Nice.
and
Awesome.
and concepts. Um, what are some of the challenges now in the industry that you see, and how are your contacts, people who are MLOs or brokers, how are they handling it, and what kind of advice can you give to them? Because that's who our target audience is here, and we'd like to give them some good info.
Yeah, this has been so far, we're 4 months in, but the year of technology. I should scrap that and say the year of AI, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity, and I think larger size companies, you see them embracing technology without a doubt and looking for ways to streamline their operations. But I think what the big equalizer is for medium and smaller sized offices is that AI allows them to have the same size, scope, and reach as larger companies. Um, The problem is many, including myself, don't know where to start. We don't know, necessarily what's the right platform to start with, what's the right way to get going. So it's a lot of information. There's definitely an AI arms race. You see companies pushing out anything that has the word AI on it, which is not a great way to go either. And then you have others that are kind of strategically putting pieces in place, and we're the same way, right? We have really, I think we were kind of on the forefront of using OCR technology and AI technology to kind of advance us as a company. But even at the loan officer level, loan officers are looking at ways to instill AI more than just doing posts for them on social media, but looking at ways to set up agents and AI to knock out tasks and automate tasks. But even that process requires programming and knowledge and ways to get that done. So I think, the positive side is the technology is there, accessible, inexpensive for people to plug in and really make a strong impact on their business. The negative side of that is you have to learn how to do it, and at the same time you're learning how to do it, your competition is trying to do it. So it feels kind of like like an 80s Cold War scenario, where you have these kind of competing ideas and concepts fighting against each other. What I would say is already, I mean, we talked about this even, this time last year, there's this conversation of, what was the saying? AI is not going to replace your job. Not knowing AI is, I forget the saying, but basically the idea is one way or the other, AI is here. You have to embrace it. And that is what will protect you and keep you employed, is knowing how to utilize AI to strengthen your business. So it's that thing where you have to learn it, you have to get it, but you don't even know where to start. And then, again, people at a later generation have a harder time adapting to that change in many cases than younger generations. So I think that, again, I hate to say technology, but AI related arms race that we're going through is kind of the biggest opportunity and challenge at the same time for our industry. And you see it without a doubt. It's every second or third conversation I have is about that. Have you seen this? Do you know how to do this? And it moves so fast that by the time you have a grasp on what to do, it's already changed. So it's just moving quickly, very quickly. And there's some fantastic companies. Again, I put ourselves in that bucket as well. But there's some fantastic companies that are coming up with some really well designed platforms and ideas catered to our industry, which is great, because the truth is, until the last 10 or so years, we have not been an industry that has been known for our tech.
Right.
It's another story I love to tell. Is when in 2001, when I got into the industry, we had those paper files, and in between every 1003 was a piece of carbon paper. And when I tell people that story, I'm like, that's 2001, not the 1970s. We were still using carbon paper in the early 2000s. I mean, it really comes down to how you're utilizing technology. And if you're not, I feel for you. It's going to be a struggle moving forward. But there's a lot of inexpensive ways to plug in, and it really can help level the playing field between you and the competition.
Well, and I'm gonna kind of play off of that a little, and ask you this. We have a lot of organizations out there, the Originators Network, they do a lot of these great events and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I see them doing like NMLS update training, to get your annual stuff. Do you think there is a place for I don't know, a company or a set of instructors or some way to create the kind of training it takes to get people who are unfamiliar with AI? And can you envision some of these organizations, maybe like Association of Mortgage Professionals for various states or whatnot? Do you see that as something that will evolve in the near future to help solve this problem? Because it is a problem. I mean, it's
Sure.
a challenge, at least.
Yeah, it's amazing. Again, maybe a little over a year ago, you would go to a lot of conferences, and we were talking AI, but at that time it was really more how to open up ChatGPT and how to get it how to get it to write posts for me or how to get it to help me write emails, right? So it's very kind of basic entry level. How do I get it to, help write for me, essentially?
Yeah.
What's amazing now is you do see some of that stuff. You do. We had a gentleman down here for our last Power event, Daniel Hughes. He's an originator. He's not an AI guy. He's a very techie guy, but not professionally trained that way, right? He's just a user of technology. And he does some training now, primarily for his company. He volunteers his time and speaks on some of the tools he does, but he's not a corporate trainer that does that. At least, that as far as I know today, he should, but he's not, as far as I know today. But he gets into the real nitty gritty, and that's what originators need. I think there's a huge need for, what is an AI agent? How do I do that? I would love to have AI assistants that do some tasks for me. Even when I don't have my computer open, even when things aren't running, it's still kind of working for me. But how do I do that? That's not something I can just type in ChatGPT and it'll just do it, right?
Yeah.
You got to know how to code, and so the tools are there, but I think some good instruction on that topic, and how, even for new companies, right? How do you set up your company in an AI world? I haven't seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of company talk about either the tech that they have or ways that you can communicate with the AI. I've seen not as much on how to really structure a company focused on that. I see a lot of retrofitting versus starting from scratch. I think there is a ton of opportunity for the right company and the right instructor and the right whatever setup to be able to do that for sure, because there is 100% a need. And I think even those of us that think we know AI know, very fractional amount of the actual impact that it can have on your day to day. Like, I got to write down the list of things that I don't enjoy, and that's the stuff that I need automated. I don't need it to automate the tasks that I actually like. I actually like going into LinkedIn and doing posts and, seeing who's out there and that kind of stuff. So I don't want to lose that piece, right? So I'm looking at ways to find AI to do some of the other things that are less fun for me. But that's different for every person. Maybe you hate doing social media posts. That's fantastic. Maybe like, putting the AI tool in to monitor your pipeline and look at interest rates and know when your rates are in a certain range. Like, all that stuff is possible.
Well, I'm sure we'll see this all start playing out pretty quickly over the next year.
Moving very quickly. Yeah. And next year, you and I are going to be talking virtually through AI assistants based on the stuff that we told them we wanted to talk about. Versus us being sitting here talking to each other.
Right. Absolutely. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up for today because I've kept you long enough, but I really appreciate you coming on and just speaking candidly about the industry and your experience and whatnot.
This has been great, Jerry. It's good to see you again. We get to talk a lot via Teams and chat and that kind of thing, but good to be face to face, even if it's virtually. So yeah, glad to come on anytime.
Mike, thank you again for joining us and sharing your experience, perspective, and leadership insights. One theme that stood out throughout our conversation is that success in this business is rarely accidental. It comes from developing good habits, investing in relationships, remaining open to new ideas, and continually looking for ways to provide value. As our industry continues to evolve through technology, AI, and changing market conditions, the professionals who will succeed will be those who combine innovation with genuine partnership and a commitment to excellence. That's exactly the kind of mindset we strive to foster at AD Mortgage. We don't just want to be another lender. We want to be a trusted partner that helps mortgage professionals grow, adapt, and win in any market. Thank you for joining us for this episode of AD Mortgage Insights. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow AD Mortgage on LinkedIn, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit our website for more interviews, market insights, educational resources, and success stories from across the mortgage industry. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, AD Mortgage helps you win.